What are some steps that somebody can take to begin to like rewire some of these negative thought patterns, whether it's I'm not enough, this is never going to happen, I'm not good enough, so that they can have their actions align with their thoughts?
Great question. And, there is a lot of that negative self talk around. And it's important to understand for a start that that's normal, that everybody has that kind of thought or like periods of time where they may have more of those types of thoughts. And it's quite hard when you're already in that negative spiral to really try to turn it around. I do want to get back to resilience in a while because your podcast is called The Adversity Advantage. So we should also speak about what to do when it feels like nothing's happening or things have gone wrong. But let's say it's a regular day, and sometimes it crosses your mind that that kind of goal is not going to happen for you. Doesn't happen to people like me, or that's for kind of other people. So when you have a recurring negative thought, there's usually a very firmly held belief underneath it that drives that thought. So, it could be to do with worthiness, deservingness. Um, and so it's important for people to kind of dig underneath the recurring negative thought and ask themselves, what is it that I must believe about myself to keep having that thought? And often it's very non-conscious because it may come from childhood and that pathway's been there for so long that you're not even aware of it. If you can do the journaling or the therapy or the self-reflection to understand what the belief is that's driving your thought, then you can create a positive affirmation or a mantra that's the opposite statement to that belief. And you can repeat that every time you have the thought so that you're basically trying to overwrite that pathway in your brain with this new, more positive thought. And that's an interesting one because in the brain, you can't undo what's already wired in there. You have to overwrite it or replace it with something that you'd prefer. And so that's the science. And then from Buddhism, there's a teaching that says replace every negative thought with a positive thought. And that's been around for thousands of years, but it's now kind of backed up by the neuroscience. So it's nice to understand that that's kind of a spiritual philosophy and it's aligned with how things work in the brain.
So, what would be an example of like replacing a positive thought and an what would be an example of replacing a negative thought with a positive one based on science and based on your research?
So if we use some of the examples that you gave, like, I'm not enough or that's not going to happen for me, then it could be very simply, it could be I'm more than enough. I deserve good things to happen in my life. Um, I can take agency over my life and make this happen for me. I remember for myself, when I first changed career, when I stopped being a doctor and I was moving into business, I went for a sort of job interview. And I remember thinking, I've got no experience in the business world, and I just don't think they're going to want to employ me. And so I thought about that really carefully, and I thought, what can I say to myself that's authentic? Because I can't say I have lots of experience in this area. That's going to help me to turn up as the best version of myself to that interview and just see what opportunities could arise from it. And for me, with that one, and I was doing a lot of self reflection at the time, so it may be that not that easy for people to come up with a phrase that really works like this. But for me, it was let your true self shine through. And I just kept repeating that. And I said it to myself just before I walked into the room. And then my behavior in the interview was based on letting my true self shine through rather than trying to, be somebody that I wasn't. So that worked for me.
So, how can people then push through when their life may seem like it's completely falling apart and that they don't have anything going for them, and then they're trying to tell these themselves these positive affirmations, but yet like the reality just doesn't necessarily reflect that? Like, how can somebody um begin to transcend that, to begin to transcend that?
I really like that you've said that because if these statements don't feel authentic, if you keep saying, I deserve great things and you don't believe that, it's not actually going to work. So, um, and also when everything's going wrong, when life, feels like it's terrible, another thing from the science that can be helpful is that in that moment or that period of time, the one thing that you still have control over is your mindset, how you think, how you wake up in the morning, how you show up every day. And I'm not saying it's easy, but if you understand that regardless of what's going on around you, you can make the choice to keep yourself positive, to keep yourself optimistic and hopeful and grateful, then that's down to you. And it's absolutely okay to have days where you just, feel negative about the reality of your situation, but you can't let that go on for too long because that's not going to help you. But, starting to build up your resilience, be resourceful, see that you can turn around your mindset in a few days if you need to. That's the start of changing your life. And once you can make that more the way that you think and act, it's much more likely that those good things that you want will come into your life than if you consistently focus on everything that's going wrong and what you don't have, and allow your mind to be so negative that it's going to increase your cortisol levels, it's going to erode your immunity, it's going to stop you from accessing all the brain power that you have available to you. So I was really, when you asked me to be on the podcast, it's that your story and the fact that it's adversity advantage was definitely appealing to me because it really aligns with how to train your mindset to overcome adversity and show yourself that you're more resilient. And then there's even a further step than that. So resilience is bouncing back as quickly as you can when something's gone wrong. And then there's anti-fragile, which is basically always learning and becoming better through adversity. So it's not just about getting back to how you were when, things were going better, but it's coming out of adversity and proving to yourself that you are actually now even better than you were before.
And then you work that adversity muscle, and then the next time you're faced with it, your mind understands that you can get through this. You've gotten through this before, like, "Let's go, we can do this," right? And then you just keep building that muscle to be you keep building that muscle to help make it stronger and stronger and stronger.